Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for attending this afternoon's program. I know it's a little bit dreary outside, but I hope you were able to enjoy the market and enjoy the exhibitions that are on view. So thank you for coming. My name is Kelly Daly, and I'm the Director of Public Programs here at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. Here at NMWA, we're committed to having better representation of women artists, creators, and business owners, and to serve as a hub for dynamic exchanges about art and ideas. Quite frankly, we love to highlight women who are doing cool, inspiring things. We have such an incredible lineup of panelists today, each bringing a wealth of knowledge in their respective fields. To reduce our paper waste, you are welcome to scan this QR code or go to nmwa.org/Fresh Talk for our speakers' full bios and our version of a digital program. All of our speakers today have unique perspectives about sustainability and ethical production, whether it be in their business or creative practices, or the cause-driven communities they've created through their work. The focus of the conversation today is on conscious consumerism, a movement that reflects a fundamental shift in how we approach our purchases, aligning them with values of social responsibility, economic equity, and environmental sustainability. In this era of rapid global change, the importance of conscious consumerism cannot be overstated. As buyers, our choices hold immense power to shape industries, influence policies, and ultimately drive positive change in our world. Through today's discussion, we aim to explore how brands, creators, and artists are adapting and thriving in this evolving landscape and creating products, spaces, and communities that resonate with the values of consumers. Following this panel discussion, I invite you all to stay for our signature Catalyst Cocktail Hour, where you can connect with our speakers and other audience members. The cocktail hour will be held on the mezzanine and feature a sustainable-focused menu of appetizers and snacks. Please join me in welcoming Zsameria Rayford, Anne-Marie Johnson, Aurora Robson, and Kelly Perkins to begin our conversation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. So today we are here for the Fresh Talk, Conscious Buying and Creating. I'm going to start with my little slide, and then we'll go from there.
SwapDC has changed people's mindset of what swapping is all about. Nothing new needs to be made unless you're making it out of recycled items. You really don't need to make new stuff. Because we have enough shit in the world as it is. Took care of the planet that we had. We're not going to get another one. It's not going to happen. We only got one planet. SwapDC is a wave. Well, there's only one Earth. There's a lot of planets.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Johnson. I'm the owner and founder of Bitter Grace. And if you've not heard of us before, we are local to the DC area. We have our store in the Union Market District. And a little bit about Bitter Grace. It means my first name, Anne-Marie, in other languages. And from day one, we've always been beyond the clothes. That's always been the symbol of the brand and the business I wanted to cultivate. And we are driven by three main pillars: community, sustainability, embodiment. And I would have to say, conscious and ethical fashion found me in the middle of the pandemic when we were building out our very first store in Capitol Hill. And it was one customer inquiry that came through asking how our clothing is made and where we're sourcing our products. And at the time, we were offering and selling other brand partnerships in our business. And so it really, that one customer inquiry, when I didn't get the adequate response from the brand partnerships and the reps I worked with, it really didn't sit well in my being. And that whole experience really revealed how important integrity is in my day-to-day life and how I make decisions that was perhaps not conscious about, but it was really this main driver in how we were making decisions. So that one experience really led us to transforming the brand and and the way in which we operate and do business, pivoting our partnerships and bringing in more sustainable and ethical options, connecting with brands. The person behind the brand and the product means so much, because transparency and authenticity is also one of those values that are really important in how we make decisions and how we partner with people. And so it also led us to, because inclusivity is important to us, it also led us to investing in our own clothing development and production. That really started around that same time when we opened our store in Capitol Hill in 2020. Because we wanted to offer more quality products, and what that means is that garments that are made of natural fabrics, plastic-free, and we really focus on foundational staples and key pieces in your wardrobe that should be made naturally. If you're gonna be wearing this stuff every day, our skin is our largest organ, but yet we don't even think about how, things that are made of plastic can really affect us long-term in our health. I mean, there's a lot of unknown factors. There's a lot of things that we don't know. But I will say this, the journey has been so eye-opening, and I've learned so much, and it opened my eyes to this complex global ecosystem that I think I have more questions today than answers. And it's certainly not about perfection, but it's about learning through the process of doing this and doing the work to educate, to really make a difference and to make an impact, because I truly believe in the power of individual consumerism, that we have that power, our choices matter. But more importantly, what the journey has taught me is that it really provided me a greater understanding around why clothing waste is such a big problem today, not just in this country, but in different parts of the world, that deserves to be spoken about more. But I would say the most beautiful thing about this whole process of investing in our clothing line and our clothing production is what the journey has achieved for me. Because through it all, I've gone to know myself in a deeper way, the values that are very important to me, the things that matter in life. And so it really changed the way I show up. It changed the way I dress, the things that I consume in my daily life. And most importantly, the way it has enhanced my own self-image. And I think it has profoundly changed my life, that I want to pay that forward to other people. I want others to feel those same feelings, because what we wear matters, because it's how we feel that transcends to and through us, that attracts those opportunities to us. And my hope and my wish is that through our journey, through our Bitter Grace journey, we can empower people to get curious around their own clothing choices, the why behind your choices, and also to be able to use clothing deliberately and intentionally that enables you to step into the fullest, most authentic version of you, and really this heroic version of ourselves that deserves to shine in our daily lives, and especially in moments when it matters. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Aurora Robson, and I've been working with plastic debris as my primary medium for about 20 years. This is one of my earlier pieces. It's called Be Like Water, and it changes its form like water would, depending on the vessel it's in. We make more waste per capita than any country in the world. So it struck me as the right thing to do, start working with this material that people are very confused by. We think of it as disposable when it's exactly the opposite. So I started exploring the archival integrity of it. This piece has been installed in a number of different locations, and when I first started my journey with plastic debris, I was mostly working with polyethylene terephthalate, which is the clear bottles that our beverages often come in. And there's been a lot of confusion about chemical compositions in this material, and people are becoming increasingly aware of what it means to have this much plastic pollution in the world and what it's doing to our food chain. It's in our air, it's in the water, it's in the cellulose of plants, it's in our blood, especially the younger people who grow up more exposed to it than the older people. who had less, they had less exposure when they were young, so they had more time for their organs to develop and whatnot. So it's a growing problem, which makes me more and more determined every day to keep going. So over the course of my practice, I gradually started integrating other methods for working with this material. This is a piece that I made in 2015, and it's using an industrial plastic welder, which most people don't realize is an option for sculpting with plastic. Most people think you can weld metal, and that's it. Turns out, virgin plastic is welded all the time, and people don't realize, these playgrounds and things like that, your dashboard of your cars, all this stuff is made out of plastic, but people don't think of it as having, we're in a museum, so I can say archival integrity, which is kind of the confusion that I find really interesting and also fertile. It's like a fertile landscape for inquiry and to try to figure out what to do with all the stuff that's here. So this is welded with an industrial plastic welder, and it's made out of low linear density polyethylene taken from these big crates that were littering the landscape all over New Brunswick, Canada. It's by the Bay of Fundy. It's really beautiful up there. And they can't be recycled on continent. I think about maybe in the beginning of COVID, people were banding about the statistic of 9% as what people thought were getting recycled in terms of plastic. But it's actually more like 5%. So it's kind of, anything you can do with this material is to keep it, to sequester it into a work of art is better than nothing. So this is a fun experiment, and it's actually at a botanical garden, and I'm going back there to do another piece this summer, so I'm happy to learn that it's stood the test of time. Pure experimentation, as it be. This is a piece that's actually in Arlington at Metropolitan Park, and it's the newer technique that I've been exploring with plastic debris. It's 100% upcycled post-industrial medical grade polyethylene terephthalate, and it's 3D printed. So it's very exciting because the nature of the material itself is always morphing and changing and evolving and sort of lending itself to our needs or our perceived needs. It's this material of convenience. But we got by for a long time without it. So, I'm sure we can figure out, clean up our room. We can clean up our room. So this is large format 3D printed, and at night it has illumination from within. And it's the first piece made using this technique in the world. So feel free to go take a look at it. It's nearby, and yeah, I'm so grateful you're all here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I am Kelly Perkins. I am the founder of Spinster Sisters Co. We are a water-free and plastic-free personal care company. All of our products are delivered in bar form and delivered in FSC-certified paperboard boxes. So they're home compostable. They're printed with soy-based inks. So much better for the environment. The beauty and personal care industry is one of the biggest offenders of plastic waste in the world. It generates 120 billion units of plastic every year. About 9 million tons of that plastic ends up in our oceans, and as you said, about 5% actually gets recycled. Especially things like pumps and sprayers that are on your skincare products, you can't just throw those in the recycle bin because they're mixed plastics. So you have to actually have the wherewithal and the desire to pull them apart before you put them in your recycle bin and hope at that point that they actually get recycled, because small pieces of plastic don't typically get recycled. So That's one aspect of the beauty industry. The other aspect that's super wasteful is lotions, liquid soaps, things like that, are anywhere from 70 to 90% water. So we are paying the environmental cost and, and the monetary cost of shipping water across the country or across the globe. So it's a very, unfortunately, very wasteful industry. So we are trying to make change by creating the water-free and plastic-free skincare line. We are a woman-owned company, a B Corp certified company, and we're also plastic negative certified. So we can control how much plastic we put out into the world, but what we can't control is what comes into our warehouse from our raw materials suppliers, packaging suppliers, things like that. So we weigh every pound of plastic that comes into our warehouse. We offset it twice. And we work with a company called Repurpose Global that has plastic reclamation sites all around the world. The particular project that we work with is in Chennai, India. I think I'm saying that right. But they actually go to the beaches and the ocean, pull the plastic waste out, and repurpose it into new packaging. So it's very impactful for me. Anyway, I feel very good about it. So far, we have reclaimed 2,000 kilograms, over 2,000 kilograms of plastic, which is the equivalent of 478,000 tubes of lip balm. So we're moving in the right direction. But that's what we're all about, and thanks everybody for coming.
So all of our projects, companies, businesses, brings awareness to sustainability, but what inspired you to start focusing on ethical production and sustainability in your work?
Yeah, I think I touched on that a bit. I don't think sustainability was not in my mind when I started the business, when we first opened in 2019. And yeah, I think sustainability, sustainable fashion, I like to say conscious fashion because there's a level of intention behind that. But yeah, it found me, in 2020, and I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be the individual or consumer I am today if it wasn't for Bitter Grace, for the journey I've been on in clothing production and development. In many ways, it is so discouraging, to see the amount of waste that the clothing and the fashion industry, same thing with the beauty industry, and how much gets wasted and dumped in landfills every single day, that sometimes we don't realize how it impacts beyond our own lives here in the US. Like, there's so many lives that make up a garment that we don't even really sometimes think about. So every single piece that we have in our closet, there's many lives that touches that garment. And so for me, because going back to integrity is so important, so intrinsically important to me, I certainly didn't want to build a business that wasn't aligned with that value. And I wanted to stand for something different. I wanted to be a different person, a different leader for my community, and most importantly for myself. I wanted to feel good about go to bed at night knowing that you're doing the right thing. That's really what integrity, I think we have different definitions sometimes of what integrity is, but for me, it's about leading by example and doing the right thing. So I'm so glad that one customer inquiry came through, because it forever changed me, and I will never be the same wearer or person because of that. And I think that's what fuels me, is through this journey and experience and connecting with people one person at a time. And we underestimate our own power to influence the people in our own lives. And that's really what's been amazing so far. I don't know if I answered your question.
You answered more than my question. What inspired, what was that first thing that just, made you change in how you did your art?
Well, I guess at the time I was living in New York City, And when you spend much time in New York City, you're surrounded by a culture of excess. It's like a hyperabundance. Trash day in New York City, piles and piles and piles of garbage, and a lot of artwork being celebrated in contemporary museums and galleries that was made out of virgin materials. And it was almost like people weren't paying attention. It was interesting to me that there was this stuff floating around because it's so lightweight. And it doesn't get anchored. It's like the liquid, it's petroleum-based. Most people don't realize that. And, it's just sort of slipping around through the cracks of our lives. And I noticed nobody was really working with it in contemporary galleries or museums. And I thought, well, that's odd. Yet we have all this, kind of trust for this material that we know so little about the chemical compositions in it and the adverse effects on our neurological systems. They're cancerous. They also have, it's been proven recently that they're making us increasingly more androgynous. They're creating more crossover between estrogen and testosterone, which is crazy. It's affecting our reproductive systems, our neurological. It's a kind of horrible cocktail of pollutants and chemicals that we are trusting to put to our lips, to put to our babies' lips, to clothe ourselves with. And I thought that was a really tragic thing. And maybe I should try doing something about it. So that was the inspiration. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm from Colorado, and I grew up in Boulder, so natural products have been a part of my life since the day I was born. And as I grew the business, when I started the business initially, we were a much more traditional skincare company. We also were using the plastic sprayers and pumps and things like that. And over time, I started learning more and more about plastic waste and how damaging it is. I knew I wanted to become B Corp certified, but I did not know at the time what an impact it would have on our business. B Corp certification is essentially a certification that you get that's, the tagline is business as a force for good. I believe that as business owners and creators, it is our responsibility to help consumers reduce their environmental footprint. So I went after the B Corp certification, again, not really knowing what I was getting into. So in my mind, B Corp certification was about the environment only. But it's been such an amazing transformation for my company because they look at how you treat your employees, how your supply chain treats their employees. Is your supply chain clean? How are you involved with your community? Of course, things like greenhouse gas emissions and utilities and things like that. But it absolutely transforms my business in such a good way, and it took me a year and a half. So there was celebration when it finally happened, but it was the best thing I ever could have done for my company. So if anybody's interested in B Corp certification, happy to talk to anyone about it, but
Me first.
I feel like it changed our world for sure.
Thank you. So as we know, profit produces pollution. That's just an overall thing. So how do you navigate the balance between sustainability and profitability in your business?
That's always the toughest part in the fashion space. When you're coexisting with so many options. Women's apparel is a multi-billion-dollar industry for a reason. Probably for many reasons. Just cultural conditioning, social conditioning, and just, like the pressure as women especially, like looking a certain way and dressing a certain way. And at a certain point, sometimes we, like going back to like our authentic power is so Like that individual, like our individual choices are so important and so powerful that there's no, government regulations are not really going to make that kind of impact when clothing making today is a global ecosystem. It's hard to enforce regulations in other countries because we're just not simply able to do that. And so at one point, circularity is important. I think what you're doing with Swap is amazing. But at the same time, there's a deeper root to create sustainable change. And it comes down to the onus of the individual. It's like your clothing choices, your choices matter. And it has a ripple effect that has implications socially in terms of the human aspect of the people behind garments. I mean, there's been so many, like the Ram Plaza, if anybody knows that in Bangladesh, a factory that, that was not in the condition to operate and killed thousands of people. But that was just like, that hit the media at a mainstream level because it was so big. But there's how many other factories out there? And typically they're always outside of the US. How many factories out there that we don't even know about or we haven't heard about in our mainstream media? So we don't realize our clothing choices and our own investments matter that impacts the lives of so many people around the world. So there's the environmental aspect, the social aspect, it's also political, but there's also health implications that I think all the panelists have touched on that are incredibly sometimes unknown to us, like the health implications long term when it comes to wearing plastics. More than 60% of garments today are made of polyester and synthetics. That's a massive difference from how clothing was made back in the 50s and 60s when quality was so important. Nowadays, I mean, quality is not even of importance. I mean, the speed in which garments are even made today is incredibly disastrous. It's so tragic because it's like, again, the lives of, and then we are, as consumers, we're perpetuating this, right? And so I think that individual consumer, and that's why education is so important. Transparency is important. As a business, we have I have the personal responsibility to do the right thing and to educate and to empower, because it's only through empowered consumers that sustainable change begins. But profitability, that's, I think it's a long-term game, But it's exciting to be part of this movement right now with sustainability and sustainable fashion, but asking the right questions is key because greenwashing is also very much, there's a lot going on. So, as people, as individuals, asking the questions allows you to make better choices and understanding what your values are, understanding what your future aspirations are, because those things should matter in how you make decisions and what you consume and what you invest. And that clothing is a valuable commodity. It's not something that's meant to be disposable every single season or whenever an event is over, like you just dispose it as if it has no value. But that's what it's become today. That's when you when you see something of value, you don't treat them like garbage, right? But we treat our clothes in that way, in many ways. So I think it comes down, it's a very cultural thing, and I think it comes down to changing your behavior. It's hard. We're creatures of habit. So change is difficult, right? When these are certain beliefs that have been passed down to us about our relationship with clothing and how how we see clothing to be. And so that journey so far for me personally, I'll never be the same person because of what I've seen and what the journey has achieved for me. And for that to me is priceless. But I hope that through our journey, our story, our one-on-one connections, and through this types of events that we can, one at a time, create change.
Did you need me to read the question again?
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of figured. How do you navigate the balance between sustainability and profitability in your company?
That's a very, very difficult thing to navigate, but so much of what you said was so beautiful, thank you. But for me, I mean, what I think about, profitability from a purely economic standpoint is one thing, but the profits I think all of us gain from doing this type of work it's immeasurable from an economic standpoint. And it turns out you actually don't need that much. So how much profit do you really need? You know, we live in this culture where it's like we have this really aggressive appetite for the newness, you know? And it's so destructive to ourselves. It's interesting, no other species has this kind of degree of self-destructive nature. And I think about, you know, the thing I think has been the key for me to be as profitable as my work is, which is not hugely profitable, but the key has been to reach just enough people who are willing to slow down for a second and are able to. Because in this country, so many of us are living in the tyranny of the moment, racing to keep up. We don't get the kind of vacations they get in Europe. We don't have, like, the pandemic gave many people some time to reflect, which was maybe the only real gift from that. But, you know, if you don't have time to think, you don't have time to make better choices. And so I think, you know, my degree of navigating profitability has really been the result of trying to use the nature of my work, which is not the same as most art practices, by virtue of its sustainable aspect, to broaden the cultural landscape. And I can't tell you how grateful I've been that so many people who have never bought a piece of fine art before have crossed that threshold because the work is made out of plastic debris. And I feel like it's such you know, it's a miracle. I want more artists to practice this way because it feels so good at the end of the day to not be extracting in order to express your artistic vision. You know, our jobs as artists it's to be a visionary. So I try to envision a sustainable future, and that's how I do it.
What is this word you keep saying, profitable? I don't know what that means. Yeah, I also, Aurora and I were discussing this a little bit ago, that I think, you know, the pandemic gave everybody the opportunity to take a step back. Skincare is, luxury skincare is a luxury item. It's very easy to put that aside when finances aren't good and things like that. But I think that the pandemic gave everybody the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what we're putting in our bodies and what we're putting on our bodies. So for that little tiny piece of the pandemic, I'm thankful that people have had that opportunity. We take every step that we possibly can in our production practices. We use renewable energy to power our manufacturing facility. Our packaging is home compostable. Our ingredients are entirely plant-based, so they are biodegradable, safe for the environment. And I think that people now recognize that these things can't be done at a low cost. So I think people are choosing better with their dollars to support sustainable companies. So like I said, there's not much I'm thankful for about the pandemic other than it gave everybody, you know, the chance to kind of take a step back and reevaluate the future. And I'm hopeful. I feel very hopeful. People are recognizing the damage that plastics do and that chemicals do and all the things. So I feel like we're going to see change coming, and that makes me excited.
So Kelly, are you saying you made, or did you see an increase in profit during the pandemic or after?
Well, we became a hand sanitizer company for about 8 months, so that was pretty profitable, yes. But but I do think people recognize more now when brands are trying to do the right thing and supporting us maybe more than they have in the past. So thank you for anybody that's doing that.
Can I just touch on profitability real quick? It's a simple supply and demand. And I think until individuals can start demanding for like natural garments and better quality garments, I think that's really when we're going to see that shift. And that's when things become a little bit more affordable, even though it's subjective. People think sustainable fashion is too costly, but have no idea what actually entails throughout that process, the different variables that are in play. But when there is a higher demand for cheap, inexpensive clothing, that's what you're going to get. That's a supply and demand model that can be really challenging when it comes to conscious creators. And entrepreneurship is not easy in so many ways, but being a conscious entrepreneur adds another complexity that I think I'm so glad that the museum is doing these kind of events, because it's so important to raise awareness and to educate and empower people. Knowledge is not power when it's not applied.
So are you saying we should make sustainable fashion a trend?
Absolutely, awesome. Yes. And asking the questions, yes, the tough questions. I love it when our customers challenge us. It really has enabled us to do better and to always make the right choices given the information that we have.
Thank you. So as we here on the stage know, and I hope that you two know this, that you don't have to be a scientist to know what's going on and the consequences of global warming and the warming world that causes humanitarian crisis, extinction of animals, hunger, and lack of clean water. So what are some of the emerging trends or innovations in sustainability and ethical practices that excite you? What's new? What do you see that it's like we should do more of?
I'll go because I'm super excited about it. So we are, everybody's heard about regenerative farming. It's definitely a trendy thing right now. But from my perspective, plants that are grown in clean soil create more phytonutrients, produce more phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are essential for so many things, both ingested and on our skin. They're great for UV protection. They fight free radicals, so it helps reduce aging, slow down aging a little bit. So we are moving towards regenerative farming. We are also for our supply chain. So in Western Africa, Ghana, shea butter, cocoa butter, things like that. So I'm very excited about that. There's also been a ton of innovation from a packaging perspective and opportunities and options for plastic-free packaging. So, for example, we have bath bombs and shower steamers. They look like they're shrunk in a plastic sleeve. It's actually made of wood and corn fiber and home compostable. There are plant-based plastics now. There are some plant-based plastics that are still plastics. So that's part of the greenwashing that's kind of prevalent. But there are plant-based packaging options now that we have never had in the past. So I'm hopeful about innovation that's coming down the pike. It's in the forefront of people's minds now, and companies are really working on giving us options that are better for the planet. Again, businesses need to lead the way, and I feel good about what's happening. So.
Yeah, for the fashion space, there's a lot of innovative things in the market, especially for the vegan folks. When it comes to, like, let's just say genuine leather, is always, in my opinion, a better option versus plastic. Like a faux leather was like when faux leather is mostly made with plastic many decades ago in just previous years. But today there's exciting things in the market for vegan folks: apple leather, cactus, corn husk, that just has that same durability and as genuine leather. And anything's better than wearing plastic on your body, in so many ways. So that's been that's been sort of around for at least 5 years. That's like continuously strengthening over time. So that's been something that we would definitely want to integrate and bring into our business one day when we want to maybe do a leather collection down the road, but it's so costly producing. I mean, that's why I love SwapDC, because there's so much value with upcycling and, even mending your garments, like learning how to sew and just like, you can do so much with, instead of like just throwing your clothes away, you can just kind of like mend it and like, sew it together and it's like brand new. But I would say that's the most exciting thing. And also like the way fabrics are also, where things become a cloth. There's also like new technology around how you can make like hemp or linen. Like hemp is one of the most durable things in the market that requires less water to grow versus any other natural raw materials out there like cotton. Cotton requires so much water to grow. So there's also harmful effects that are not the most sustainable when it comes to natural raw materials. So hemp is also a great option, and the way hemp can be woven today with better technology is actually makes it really nice and soft and comfortable on the body for people with sensitivity around linen, or even when it comes to wool and cashmere. So there's a lot of really great innovative ways in how things get woven. You have your raw material, and that raw material gets spun and weaved so that it becomes a cloth. And then the next stage is cutting and sewing so that you can create a garment out of it. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, they are like, these things happen in different parts of the world. But when it comes to comfortability, because when we think about fabrics and what we want to wear, I think that's the one thing about the pandemic that we learned. We don't want to compromise comfort anymore. But there's really some really great ways in which fabrics are woven today that is, that you want to feel comfortable but also refined, but also depending on the style, so that also matters. But I think the most exciting part in the industry is just better options for vegan or like people that don't want to do anything with animal products that are healthier than plastic and better too, that are long lasting, that are really gonna stay with you for many years. Because plastic, I don't know if you guys agree, but think about the pieces you purge from your wardrobe. I mean, what were they mostly made of, right? When it comes to polyester or synthetics, they're just not made to last the test of time. And so that's the value of what natural fabrics provide, is that it's really something that will, with proper care, that's also a twofold approach, because you want to care. But that comes down to like why we should shift our relationship with clothing and see it as something that is a valuable investment and not just something that's trivial, insignificant, or something that, that doesn't mean, that doesn't have, high value. But that's what we've been conditioned, right? With fast fashion and marketing, we've been conditioned to think of clothing as something that should not cost a certain amount, or something that should not be, repurposed and held on to for many years. So undoing that is tough, but I think that's why this is so, like having a container, a safe container, and also organizations like this and Swap and you guys is really going to be spearheading, because change needs to happen. I mean, global warming, climate change, we were just talking about that in the green room, and how that's the fact. That's what we're seeing that unfold. We've been seeing that unfold. And I mean, I don't know, I think I heard a study that we would have to cut down clothing production globally by like 90%. Like that's a lot in order to reduce, like carbon emissions, and like just to see a difference in what's emitted into the ether. Because when something is made of polyester and they end up in landfills, they're not decomposable. So what happens is that they have people burning clothes in landfills that releases all these harmful chemicals into other people's lives, into the ether, that I think there's a level of personal responsibility there beyond just me as a business owner. I think every single person in this room, can make a huge difference. And it comes down to the choices you make when it comes to your wardrobe choices.
I'm excited about a whole different kind of innovation that I'm not an expert on by any means, but recently scientists in Europe have discovered that through pyrolysis, they can actually extract 88% of the fuel from high-density polyethylene plastic.
Through what?
Pyrolysis. It's a lab process where they can extract the fuel back out of the plastic, which is obviously cost prohibitive. But who's making the plastic? It's really ExxonMobil. It's really the gas company. They have lots of money. So, I'm curious to see, like, as this kind of innovation in terms of shifting that trajectory becomes more common knowledge, what kind of accountability shifts are going to happen in the future? And, maybe more people will be able to sleep well at night like we do.
Okay. So with sustainability and just living your everyday lives, how do you maintain being sustainable? I guess not just in your companies, but just in your personal lives. Like, what do you do that really you feel like contributes to the better of our planet? Or how do you share that with other people, and not just in your business, but in your personal lives?
So we are obviously working hard at being plastic-free. And I'm glad that you asked this question, because I think that people get very wrapped up in taking big steps and doing them perfectly. And I think all of us need to take imperfect action and take little baby steps. And I found, since I started going plastic-free in the company, I notice a lot more everywhere that plastic is. In my own home, in restaurants, everywhere you go, it's just everywhere. So for me, like I said, I hope that we can all just start taking baby steps towards doing the right thing. Because it really does, when you take those little baby steps, you start becoming more and more aware and noticing things and driving change. And we all need to be driving change right now.
Change won't drive itself. Exactly. Turns out.
What do you mean? It's not automated?
That's such a tough thing. I think sometimes I might, I feel like, okay, I've intercepted how much plastic debris from the waste stream over the past 20 years. It's an astronomical amount. People send me their plastic debris from all over the world to work with, which is beautiful, but complicated from a fossil fuel standpoint, obviously. So, I think my approach is always to try to think about how, what makes me feel good? What makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing? How can other people be a part of that good feeling? And it's not going to be the same for everybody. Like, some people just can't give up plastic water bottles. It's too hard. They live a certain lifestyle and it's too convenient, or they can't afford it, or they forget. Like, nobody's perfect. We're all creatures of habit. It's very hard to change habits. But if you just pick one thing, it's sort of like, creative problem solving. You don't attack all the problems at once. You just pick one, and you start with that. And then once you get that into your vocabulary, training the people around you is not easy. But they eventually warm up to it, it seems like, and wanna play the game. It's like a dance almost, and figure out how to not step on all the toes.
Well, yeah, when you're in this and you're immersed in this stuff every day, it really forever changes you. And yeah, even like reducing waste, like that's really what sustainability means in many ways. How can we reduce the amount of waste that ends up in the trash or in landfills? And so that's something that we've always taken very seriously. For us, we used to carry trendy pieces, more colorful pieces. Now for our brand and for what we offer for our customers and community, it's really pieces that you can wear no matter what the season is, no matter what the occasion or the event is. We want timelessness, versatility in mind, natural fabrics where your skin can breathe. I live in DC. I know these folks. Well, you don't have humidity in Colorado as much as we do here, but like you want your skin to breathe. Your skin cannot breathe when you're wearing synthetics. It's just and then when you're sweating through them and trap sweat and the microplastics that are forever sometimes in your system. PFAS, I don't know what it actually stands for, but anything that's petroleum-based typically comprises of PFAS, or known as forever chemicals. Because why? Because they stay in your system forever. And so I think that's like the unknown dangers and the unknown chemicals that sometimes we don't even know what really is in our garments or in our clothing. And yeah, sustainability cannot be 100% perfect when it comes to the fashion industry because there's, again, so many variables in garment making. From the dyeing process, not just the not just the fabric composition. I really encourage everybody to take a look at the care label inside your garments, because every single garment should always have one, to just kind of get curious around how many pieces in my closet are actually made polyester. And it's a nice little, just to like gain awareness, because it just gives you an idea of like how clothing making has really changed over the past few decades. But for us, we take it seriously. We went through 3 different store moves last year. So we moved our store from Capitol Hill to Union Market, and we actually repurposed 90% of our materials from our old store. So our fitting room, like our shiplap, we like took that apart. I know Lydia's here, I see her. She was the one who was part of our move, and we repurposed every single wood or every single thing that we could repurpose from our store. When it comes to our tags, we actually, the tags that you have on your garments when you're purchasing a garment, typically you carry that with you. We actually asked the customers, can we keep them? Because we like to repurpose them and reuse them for every single garment that we put on our floor. So we try to reduce waste, even when it comes to in the earlier years of garment bagging, and to protect the garments, we would reuse, even though it's plastic, we would reuse them in the earlier stages of our moves and our business. What else? My husband's right there. He's actually been part of building our store. We created a beautiful chandelier. Anybody's been to our Bitter Grace store? Out of a piece of a tree branch that we just found on the side of the road. And we turned it into a beautiful chandelier, and we put together some lights from IKEA, and it's like this unique piece that's an art piece in our store that was also from our old store. So we do our best to really reduce waste in all capacities, not just our products and our clothing.
Awesome. Be sure to check out the store if you guys are in the area, for sure. So as we are witnessing climate change and our drastic weather changes, and we cannot ignore the cost of inaction, and we cannot leave the massive concern to the next generation, we are asking that you, everyone in the audience, just take this little change, the little bit of change that you can, and just be aware of like your buying power and where you're going and what you're doing. And we want to thank the National Museum of Women in the Arts, and thank you, Kelly and Leisha. And that will conclude today's Fresh Talk, and we will be doing a cocktail hour. Where's that going to be?
Just follow the drink.
So good. You're incredible. Everybody, thank you, but Zsameria, that was incredible. You're an awesome moderator and amazing. I would love and welcome you all to come down to the mezzanine for our cocktail hour. I also want to thank Yolanda Allgood for our interpreting services today. We really appreciate it. So yes, we will see you all in the elevator. You can go to MR, and there'll be some snacks and drinks. So hopefully we'll see you all there.
And Bitter Grace has a table too on the second level of the mezzanine. So come check us at our table if you want to check out some of our pieces from our latest collection.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.